those of us that have battled the darkness of tragedy, the darkness of trauma, the darkness of addiction, and then recovered our light through spiritual purification, become guiding lamps for others.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوكل عليه، ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الحديث حديث محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة دلالة، وكل الدلالة في النار. الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة. We say Alhamdulillah for the blessing of Islam, and it by itself is enough as a blessing. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. Subhanallah, we just lost a good brother. A few days ago, I heard that Muhammad al-Sharif, who was he's one of the founders of an online learning Islamic platform here in this country. His name is Muhammad al-Sharif. You know, relatively, he was young. He had good health, and he had no medical diagnosis. He just passed away. I just heard this a few days ago. His whole life was in front of him. He had many students, employees. He just passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive him his sins, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cover him. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us to reflect upon in this verse. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. And by that, they forget about their own selves. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. The ones who do this, they are sinners. They are fasiq. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us to remember Him always. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember the meaning that you will have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you remember that you have a divine purpose. And that you remember that you will be accountable in front of Allah based upon your blessings. The amount of blessings is the amount of accountability. So, لا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah. Because when you forget about Allah, you forget about your own self. In other words, you don't prioritize. You don't put first things first. And that's how you forget about those things that are beneficial to you. You won't forget to eat. You won't forget to sleep. You won't forget to have a job. But you will forget about ultimately what's good for you. Those of us, and I include myself, wallahi, this is a reminder for me first. When we forget about Allah, this is known as ghafla. Ghafla. Ghafla is to be heedless, to not put first things first, to be obsessed with the trivial, to put secondary matters first. The one who does this, in Arabic, he's ghafil. He's heedless. Right? He's someone who's easily fooled. He's a simpleton. Right? He's not able to prioritize. This is the ghafil. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in this verse, He's saying that you have to be muhtasib of yourself. You have to take yourself to account. You have to, in the same way like you have an accountant, and he looks at all of your expenditures, he looks at all of your costs, he looks at all of your taxes, and then he says to you, this is what you have coming, or this is what you have going. You have to do that for yourself. This is known as muhasaba, to take yourself to account. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that every man will be asked about the qahl that he puts into his eye. The raising of the earth, like when you're playing with dirt, the raising of that dirt with your hands, and the touching of the cloth that belongs to your brother. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's mentioning things that we don't give any thought to. He's saying you'll be asked even for the qahl that you put in your eye. It's something you don't think about. But what he's mentioning in all of these examples is the small things that you don't consider, Allah will ask you about them. Have you considered that you have an account with Allah and there's debits and credits in that account? And you'll be asked about those things that you consider to be completely insignificant? Have you thought about that? You should understand that the believer is muhtasib over himself. He takes account of his deeds now, before the account is taken of him. The believer understands that the account of those who measure themselves now will be easy Yawm al-Qiyamah. It will be easy Yawm al-Qiyamah if you take account of yourselves now. And the one who he doesn't care, he doesn't think about it, it's not important to him, his account Yawm al-Qiyamah will be difficult. And this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is what he's pointing at. He's saying, just you, when you walk up to your brother and say, oh, that's nice, and you touch his garment, you will be asked about that. And even less than that. This is the point that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioning. So if you understand this hadith, and you want to put this hadith into practice, there's certain questions that you have to ask yourself. You have to begin to take account of your life, of your actions, and your statements. Ask yourself, do you truly believe that Allah sees you? Do you truly believe that? Especially when you are disobeying Him? Have you no shame? Becomes the next question. Do you have shame in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then think about when someone in your family disobeys you. You tell them, don't do this, and then they do it. How you're ready to take them to account? You say, hey, didn't I tell you don't do this? Or didn't I tell you to go and do that? Have you not considered Allah will do the same with you, Yawm al-Qiyamah? Have you not considered that? Don't be heedless, don't be ghafil. Or even worse, mughafil, the idiot. Look around you. We all have news of people who are dying in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. If you watch the news in your society and other societies, we all get information about this. All of these people that you see dying, they're leaving behind families. They're leaving behind wealth. They're leaving behind property. And so will you. You will leave behind your families. You will leave behind your homes. You will leave behind your wealth. What are you setting up for yourself after you pass? Who will read Quran for you at your grave? If you have children, you're not teaching them Quran, who will read Quran for you? Who will come to your grave and make dua for you? If it's not important to you, it won't be important to them. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that in the grave, the human being is like someone who's drowning, hoping to catch on something that will save him, like a life raft or a log that he can float on. The person in the grave he's hoping that someone will remember him and ask Allah to forgive him, to do good deeds in His name. That someone will come to his grave and read Quran for him, because those good deeds enter into his grave like mountains of light. The number of breaths that we have are fixed. Fixed. Your angels, they know, especially Malik al-Maut, they know, oh, this person, he has 1,000 breaths left. And then we will take his soul. And it won't be delayed for even a moment. Don't be ghafil. Know that this is the reality. You will meet Allah. You will meet Allah. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah. Don't be like those who forgot about their meeting with Allah. Don't forget about those who forgot that they have an account with Allah. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They forget about their own selves when they do that. The ghafil. They forget about their own selves. So you only have two things in front of you, ultimately. Ultimately, we only have two things in front of us. Jannah or Jahannam. It's your choice. So of course, Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never sent a messenger. He never sent a messenger except that the messenger is to be obeyed. That we're supposed to walk in the footsteps of the messenger. So we always look at the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for our example. And then we look at his companions. And then we look at the students of those companions. And then we look at the students of those students. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Khayr al-Qurun qarni." The best of generations is my generation. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. Then those that follow them. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. Then those that follow after them. So we look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we look at his companions, we look at the students of those companions, and then we look at the students of those students. And I want to give you some examples of their muhasabah. How they took themselves to account. Because we always need an example. So we'll start with Umar radiallahu anhu. And we know that he was very strict not only on himself, but on the believers around him. So Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, this is the one, he grew up in the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he spent 10 years in the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even he was amazed by what he heard and what he saw with Umar ibn al-Khattab. He said, I was once with Umar and we came to a garden which he entered, and there was a wall between me and him, but I could hear him saying to himself, "Oh, Umar, you have become pleased with the word Amir al-Mu'mineen. Beware, ittaqullah, fear Allah, and be prepared to accept His punishment." So just think about that for a moment. He is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's the leader of the believers. He's the one issuing commands. And if anyone was deserving of it, it was him. But he became afraid of the vanity that goes along with position. The love of status, he was afraid of it. And so he would take himself to task. He would say, "Oh, you like being called Amir al-Mu'mineen? You like that? Okay, then you should be afraid of Allah. And also be prepared to accept His punishment if it comes to you." And then Anas radiallahu anhu said also that I would take a stick. Anas said that Umar would take a stick and he would beat on his feet. And he would say to himself, "What actions have you done today? What actions have you done today?" This is muhasabah, taking yourself to account. And once, when Umar radiallahu anhu, he came late for the Asr prayer. He came late for the Asr prayer. And he gave away 200,000 dirhams. I didn't say 200. I didn't say 2,000. I said 200,000 to take himself to account. And once his son, Abdullah ibn Umar, he freed 2 servants because he delayed the making of Salat al-Maghrib. Where are they? In status. Where are they in taqwa? Where are they in muhasabah? And where are we? So now let's move on to some of the tabi'een, some of the students of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This brother's name was Tawbah ibn Sumah. And so he calculated, right? He's taking himself to account. He's thinking about his deeds. So he calculated, he was 60 years old at that time. And he said, okay, I'm 60 years old. And then he multiplied, those years by 360 days in a year. And he realized that if he committed one sin a day, just one sin a day, he would end up meeting the angels that came to take his soul with at least 21,900 sins. And when he realized that this was a possibility, he screamed and he said, how can I meet these angels like this? And that's how he died. He died on that realization. At that moment, when he screamed, when he said what he said, first he fell senseless, and then a little while later, he died from that. Imagine. There was another tabi'i. His name was Ghazwan. And once he was a part of a military campaign. And there was a woman who joined the military campaign, and he was fond of her. And so he began to be, after talking to her and spending more time with her, he began to look at her with lust. And so that, we know this is natural, this happens. You work in the workplace with someone, and then, the hijab, the barrier that is normally set up, it kind of becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And then finally it got to the point where he went to go and touch her one day. When he realized the grievousness of what he had done, he isolated himself and he punched himself in the eye until it swelled up. And then he said to his eye, you are looking at a thing which will do you intense harm. This is muhasabah. This is taking yourself to account. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Ghafla, if you stay spiritually heedless, you can only but end up as a fasiq, as a wrongdoer. The fasiq is the one who they commit sins all the time, and they don't call themselves to account. So one of the teachers of Imam Junayd, rahimahullah, that he once entered into a state of janaba. So he needed to take a ghusl, not wudu, he needed to take a ghusl at night. So he made his intention to get up and go and wash himself, to take a full shower. But his nafs told him to wait until the morning when you can have warm water. Just wait until the morning. This was coming from his lower self. But he had already been used to making divine service for a long period of time. So he felt as if, why is my nafs saying this to me? I worked so hard to take them to account, to have true, sincere divine service to Allah. So he wanted to take himself to account. So he took a ghusl with his clothes on, with cold water, and he let the heat from his body dry his clothing, as punishment for his lower self, even whispering that to him. Where are they? And where are we? One last narration from Talha, the companion of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that once there was a man during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took off his top layer of clothes and he laid on the hot sand on an intensely hot day. We live out in the IE. We know how this can be, how hot the ground can be when it's 110 degrees outside. And he said to himself, after laying on the ground, take a taste of that fire of hell, which is hotter than this, since you are the one who likes to sleep during the night and to be idle during the day. He's taking himself to account. And he's not talking about the fara'id. He's talking about nafilah. He's talking about getting up for tahajjud and then making the sunnahs and everything during the day. He's taking himself to account. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came up to him in this condition, and so he told him, Ya Rasulullah, my lower self has become powerful over over me. And Rasulullah said, there's no other medicine for that except the one you have adopted. And then Rasulullah turned to his companions and he said, the doors, he said, take a lesson from your brother. Take a lesson from your brother. And then he told the man, the doors of paradise have been opened for you. The angels take pride in this act of yours. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah. So of course, right, you have to have context. It should not just be abstract information. So what can you do to leave that state of ghafla? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr, it's recorded by Imam Abu Dawood and Ibn Majah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, whoever stands at night and he prays with 10 verses, just 10 verses from the Quran, will not be written amongst the heedless. Just 10 verses of Quran. You won't be written amongst those who are heedless. And then he goes on. He said, whoever stood at night for 100 verses is written amongst the obedient. And whoever stood at night with 1,000 verses is written amongst those who have intense riches. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover us. We ask us, Ya Allah, don't allow us to be of those who are heedless. We don't want to be min al-ghafilin. Those who are, they have forgotten about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't put first things first. They don't prioritize the serious matters first. And we ask you, Ya Allah, help us to be of those who they take account of themselves in this life so that they will have an easy account in the next life. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت وسلمت وصليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا طاهر قلوبنا من كل وصف يباعدنا عن مشاهدتك ومحبتك. Ya Allah, we ask you to purify our hearts from every characteristic that keeps us far away from you and from witnessing you. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us the best of this life, the best of the next life, and please save us from the punishment of the fire.